we're going to be giving our first round predictions for the draft, and then we will, if we have time after that, we will predict the division standings in the AFC. I think that's all that. Oh, Alex Smith retiring. There's more claims from Watson's attorney, and we will talk about the jersey number rule change. Anything else anything else you would like to add, Jacob?
No, that sounds good.
All right, so we'll just jump right into our predictions for the first round of this year's NFL draft. We'll go down the list, 1 through 30, saying who we think each team will pick. And yeah, so to start, I think the Jaguars. I mean, I don't think at this point it's knowledge that the Jaguars will be drafting Trevor Lawrence at number 1.
Yeah, I have that in my mock draft as well. I have Trevor Lawrence going to the Jaguars number 1. Really a can't miss prospect, and it's going to be exciting to see what he does for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
All right, and moving on to the New York Jets, pick number 2. I believe they will be drafting quarterback Zach Wilson. They just gave up Sam Darnold. They definitely need to bring in another quarterback, and he's going to be the next best pick in the draft.
Yep, I have Zach Wilson there as well. I think he's the next best quarterback in the draft. The Jets are desperately in need of a quarterback, and he makes the most sense for them.
Absolutely. Pick number 3, I think everyone has this the same as well. The San Francisco 49ers will be drafting Justin Fields most likely. They seem to be shying away from Jimmy Garoppolo. They traded a ton of draft picks to get the number 3 pick, and they wouldn't have done that if they're not going to be drafting Justin Fields at number 3.
I agree. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of rumors about Mac Jones going there, but I don't think you trade all those picks to get Mac Jones. His upside,
right.
It doesn't make sense with his upside. Justin Fields' upside as opposed to Mac Jones to take Mac Jones in that scenario. So I'm completely in agreement there. I think Justin Fields makes the most sense for the Niners to get their quarterback of the future.
Absolutely. Moving on to pick number 4, I think this one's pretty common knowledge as well. The Falcons will most likely be drafting Kyle Pitts, the tight end. Interesting topic here because a lot of Cowboys fans think that Jerry Jones should go ahead and draft Kyle Pitts if he falls to the Cowboys at number 10 in the draft, which is actually the dumbest thing Jerry Jones could do right now because the offense doesn't need any more help. They have Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Ezekiel Elliott, Dak Prescott. What they need is defense. And so to pass up the pick that I believe they're picking at number 10, which I'll get into later, and drafting Kyle Pitts instead would kind of be a useless pick because of the offense that they already have. But yes, back to the topic. I think the Falcons will draft Kyle Pitts at number 4.
Yeah, I think Kyle Pitts makes the most sense there. There's been a lot of rumors about the Falcons maybe going quarterback there if quarterback falls to that position, but I think it makes the most sense for that team to bolster that offense and just continue to move forward, see if they can give Matt Ryan an opportunity to win a Super Bowl in his career. I think everyone is in agreement that Matt Ryan doesn't have too many years left, but that they try to maximize his career and get a solid option and, arguably one of the best players in the draft in Kyle Pitts there.
Right. Moving on to number 5, I think this is where we first differed in our picks. I believe the Bengals will be drafting wide receiver Jamar Chase. I understand that they need to work on their O-line, but they also need receiver help, and they just lost A.J. Green. And when you have Jamar Chase still available at this point in the draft, you're not going to wait to Penny Sewell. You're going to draft Jamar Chase right there, in my opinion.
Yeah, in the 5 spot there, I deferred from Jimmy. I had Penny Sewell going to the Bengals. And the reason I chose that pick for the Bengals is I believe they really want to protect Joe Burrow and give him a solid offensive line piece to get more comfortable in the pocket. He obviously just got injured last year because he didn't have great pass protection, and so I want Penny Sewell, I see him as a good fit for the Bengals. Although I would not be surprised if Jamar Chase went there as well. Just with a young quarterback, you want to give him first and foremost offensive linemen and wide receivers. So I think either way,
Absolutely.
either of those picks would be good for the Bengals. It's not really something they can mess up. Both would really help their team significantly.
Right, and that one can go either way. That one's a toss-up. It's either going to be Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell.
Right.
They're going to draft one of those two, and it could go either way, honestly. So we'll just see how it goes on draft day. Number 6, the Miami Dolphins have the 6th-round pick. Not 6th-round pick. The 6th overall pick in the first round. I believe that they will be drafting Jalen Waddle, wide receiver. It's another one of those, if that wide receiver falls to you at that point, you just need to scoop him up.
Yeah, I had them getting a wide receiver as well, but I had them taking Jamar Chase, assuming that the Bengals passed on Penny Sewell.
Right.
But obviously, if the Bengals were to take Jamar Chase, I could definitely see Jalen Waddle being slotted in right there at 6 for the Dolphins, because the Dolphins, again, they have a young quarterback and they're going to want to give him weapons. And so back to the offensive line or wide receiver. Both of those are, especially when you're drafting early in the draft, you can get a game changer to really help your young quarterback.
Right. The Detroit Lions have pick number 7, and I believe they'll be drafting Devonta Smith, wide receiver. Give Jared Goff some weapons to work with and just help him out in Detroit, because we know that without help, Jared Goff will get nowhere.
Yeah, that's correct. I think, obviously Jared Goff, his defense has really carried him over the past few years of his career in LA. So he would need a lot of help in Detroit. But I think for me, I think Jared Goff was just a throw-in in that trade. I don't think the Lions plan to have him start at quarterback. And so with that being said, I had at 7 the Lions selecting Trey Lance, a guy with a lot of upside that could, potentially sit behind Goff for a few games and then take over in the second half of the season. I think Trey Lance is a great player, a lot of upside, and really could be a game-changing quarterback for the Lions moving forward.
Don't get me wrong, I don't think Jared Goff's a good quarterback whatsoever, but I do believe that he is good enough to be leading a franchise. I don't think the Lions are going to be staring away from him. But like I said, this can go either way, so we'll see how it turns out on draft day. Number 8, the Carolina Panthers. I believe this is where Penei Sewell will be drafted. They need a line to help out, Christian McCaffrey, and whether they're going to start Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Darnold, either of those quarterbacks is going to need help. So I think that's where he's going to fall in this draft.
Yeah, I had Rashawn Slater going there. Again, that's another good offensive tackle, the second best offensive tackle in the draft. So assuming that Penei Sewell goes before we get to the 8th pick, that's why I put Rashawn Slater there at number 8.
Right. And then number 9, we have the Denver Broncos. I believe they'll be drafting Micah Parsons, linebacker. It would always be nice to give Von Miller some help on that defense,
Yep, and I had them going defense as well, but I had them getting a cornerback with Patrick Surtain. It's been a while since they've had a good secondary, the Broncos, and so I think that would really bolster their secondary. So that's what I went with at number 9.
Mm-hmm. Patrick Surtain's actually who I went with at number 10 for the Dallas Cowboys. And as I was saying before, the Cowboys really think that Kyle Pitts should be drafted if he falls to number 10. But that would, like I said, that would be a huge mistake. The Cowboys really need to buckle down on that defense and start getting help in that secondary. And I think Patrick Surtain would be the person to start with.
Yeah, for the Cowboys, I actually had Micah Parsons going at number 10. And again, just bolstering that defense. Their offense has enough weapons. I just think they need to improve their defense. And Micah Parsons is the best linebacker in the draft. He's the first linebacker I have being drafted.
Yeah, but when it comes to the Cowboys, the one part of their defense that doesn't need help is the linebacker core. I mean, you got Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith, and then when he's healthy, Sean Lee. So, um, I think even if Patrick Surtain isn't there at this point, I don't think they're going to be going linebacker.
You think
But
they'd go
we'll see.
secondary no matter what?
For sure, they're going to be working on the secondary. They'd be stupid not to because that's what needs the absolute most help
Mm-hmm.
on the Cowboys defense. Because on the line you got Demarcus Lawrence, and yeah, and then in the linebacker core you got Leighton Vander Esch, Jalen Smith, Sean Lee, and in the secondary all you have is Jordan Lewis, and he's not even that great.
Makes
So
sense.
they really need to, yeah, they really need to work on that secondary.
Gotcha.
Speaking of another team that needs to work on their secondaries, the New York Giants with pick number 11, and for that reason, I believe they'll be picking up J.C. Horn, who is a cornerback.
I had the Giants at number 11. Again, with the same narrative as I've been using earlier with my explanation, I had them taking Jalen Waddle if he falls that far again. With any team with a young quarterback, obviously the Giants have Daniel Jones. They need good wide receivers and linemen to support him, so I had them taking Jalen Waddle at number 11.
Right. Okay. Moving on to number 12, the Philadelphia Eagles. Same story. They're going to need some help in the backfield. I mean, Jalen Hurts is definitely going to need some help, but I think first they're going to work on that secondary, and they're going to pick up Caleb Farley, which is another cornerback, at number 12.
So I had at number 12 for the Eagles, I had Devonta Smith going there. There's been a lot of talk about Devonta Smith being undersized and a lot of conversation swirling around that. But, I mean, you can't argue with the stats that he put up in the SEC. So clearly, regardless of how big he is, he's a great, great player. And I think the Eagles would love to have him at 12 to help Jalen Hurts to begin to take the reins there at quarterback for their football team and lead them kind of into the future, and hopefully bring them to the top of the NFC East. The Eagles hope that's going to be the scenario.
Right. Number 13, the Los Angeles Chargers. I think they're going to get Justin Herbert some help on the line, and pick up Rashawn Slater, offensive tackle.
Yeah, I had them getting a lineman as well, just a different one than Jimmy had. I had them getting Christian Darrisaw, an offensive tackle. Again, they just, when you talk about a young quarterback, Justin Herbert is definitely had a really great year last year. Beware the sophomore slump, everybody. So don't expect him to be just as good as last year. He may be, but don't expect that. Obviously, whenever you have young players in any sport, there's typically an adjustment that we see in year two that defenses make, and they're a lot better in handling that.
Right.
Quarterback that was so great as a rookie, but ultimately to help him to continue to transition and improve, they got to address that offensive line, like we talked about, offensive line and wide receivers for young quarterbacks, and I'll say that till I'm blue in the face. That's really important.
Right. Minnesota Vikings have pick number 14. I think they're also going to be working on that O-line to help out Kirk Cousins a little bit, and I think they're going to be going with interior offensive lineman Elijah Vera Tucker.
So, yeah, I had them going with offensive linemen as well. I had them going with the tackle, though, and I had the Vikings taking Tevin Jenkins.
Right. Number 15, the New England Patriots. In Jacob's ideal draft, Trey Lance is already gone at this point, but Trey Lance is still on the board for me, and I think the New England Patriots are going to be picking up Trey Lance. And that's just, Cam Newton, he wasn't very great last season. I mean, they brought in some weapons for him, but if he doesn't know how to use those weapons and he still struggles like he did last season, it'd be nice to have Trey Lance come in as a backup, and even just working under Cam Newton for when Cam Newton leaves the team, whether it be in free agency or retirement. I believe Cam Newton's only going to be there a couple more seasons either way. So Trey Lance would be a really good pick at this point.
So at 15 here, this is really interesting because the Patriots, they always seem to have something up their sleeve in every single draft. And so I had them taking at 15 Mac Jones. quarterback of the Alabama Crimson Tide last year. And the reason I had him going to the Patriots at 15, I had to think long and hard about this, but I have to think about the history of the Patriots and what they look for in quarterbacks. It's no secret that what's the Alabama head coach's name? Nick Saban. Nick Saban has a really good relationship with what's the Patriots head coach name?
Belichick.
Belichick. Yeah, so Saban and Belichick have a really good relationship, and a lot of times they're passing on players to each other. And I think Mac Jones is a great system quarterback, similar to someone else we know that is currently playing for the Buccaneers. And so I think, the Patriots might surprise a lot of people and get a player like Mac Jones who may not seem like he has the upside like other people do, and I would agree with that. Other quarterbacks do in this draft. But with Mac Jones, you know exactly what you're going to get, and you know he can run an offense with talented pieces around him. So I think that dependability may lead the Patriots to take him at 15 there.
Right, and that makes perfect sense. But with Trey Lance still on the board, I think that's where they'd be going, depending on how this turns out.
Absolutely.
Number 16, the Arizona Cardinals. You know, they worked a lot on their offense this offseason. They got AJ Green. Now they have Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins. They have a running back too, right? Don't they have a good running back?
The Cardinals have he played for the Dolphins. Anyway, they have a running back.
They're pretty stacked on offense.
Yeah, they have a running back. We just can't think of his name right now.
So I think that they're going to be working more on the defense during this draft. And I think they're going to get a linebacker in Zaven Collins. You know, J.J. Watt's great on the defensive line. But there's really not too much else on that defense. So it'd be cool to have a linebacker like Collins.
So I have the Cardinals at 16 taking J.C. Horn, cornerback. They just lost Patrick Peterson to the Vikings, so I think they want to address that position in the draft and get a nice shutdown corner that their defense is kind of lacking right now. So I think J.C. Horn goes there at 16 to the Cardinals.
Right. Moving on to the Las Vegas Raiders at number 17. This is also another team that wants to help out their quarterback. Derek Carr has really been struggling for a few seasons. I think he can use some help on the offensive line, and for that reason, I think that's where Christian Darrisaw is going to end up, offensive tackle.
So, yeah, I have the Raiders taking a lineman as well. I have them taking Christian Barmore, inside offensive lineman. Again, just bolstering that offensive line. They have, a pretty decent quarterback Derek Carr, and they have a good running back in Josh Jacobs, and they want to keep those people on the field. So they're just going to have to make sure those guys are protected with, by bolstering their offensive line. So I think they take Christian Barmore there.
Mm-hmm. The Dolphins have another pick at number 18, and I think they'll be picking up Jalen Phillips, edge.
So, yeah, I had Jalen Phillips going there as well at 18. And that's actually surprising because that's the first edge player that we have going in this draft, both me and Jimmy. And typically, in the past few years, we've seen those players go a lot higher. But because there's so many teams that need quarterbacks or they need players to protect or bolster their offense for their young quarterbacks, a lot of offensive tackles and wide receivers going early as well as quarterbacks. So interesting that we don't have an edge player going until 18. But I think, getting the best edge rusher in the draft makes so much sense. And, any team that has a good player on the edge that's getting the backfield a lot, it makes the lives of the cornerbacks in the secondary so much better, so much easier. We saw what happened with the Niners when they got that Bosa brother. I mean, they really took off as a defense because he was always getting pressure on the quarterback. And so the Dolphins, really, we have them making 2 picks in the first round, and they're getting 2 really good players. to
Right.
bolster their team. And so I think as a Dolphins fan, you got to be excited as these dominoes start lining up for you, and getting a lot of really good, talented players to bolster your team. And they're young also, so that means they're coming at a much better price tag than if you're signing a bunch of veteran free agents.
Hmm. And like we stated in an earlier episode, the Dolphins were a pretty solid team last season. They didn't
Absolutely.
need to do too much to work on their team, but adding these two like key first round picks to their arsenal will be definitely be nice. Yeah, adding an edge rusher like Jalen Phillips will definitely make their team even better than it already was. Like they're just gonna get better from here.
Absolutely.
Moving on to Washington, they want to. Who's their quarterback right now? Because they just gave up Alex Smith. They don't have Dwayne Haskins anymore.
They have Taylor Heineke is one of them. I know they have other quarterbacks that they may have signed. I just can't think of them right now. But I know Taylor Heineke. That was the guy that kind of took the reins at the end of the season. It looks pretty good, but yeah, their quarterback room is not not the best for sure.
Right. And I think that Washington will also be working on their offensive line to protect whatever quarterback happens to be quarterbacking at the time the season starts. And so I'm going with offensive tackle Tevin. Is it Tevin? Tevin Jenkins.
Yeah, yep, Tevin Jenkins. So I have Washington improving their defense and taking a solid linebacker and Zaven Collins right there at 19.
Right. Moving on to the Chicago Bears, they've made it clear that they want to make Andy Dalton their starting quarterback. But in my mock draft, Mac Jones is still on the board, and I believe that the Bears will be drafting Mac Jones. And that'll help the Bears in numerous ways. First of all, like playing behind Andy Dalton, he's not a terrible quarterback. He's a terrible quarterback now, but in his prime, he was a pretty good, solid quarterback. And so Mac Jones sitting behind him for a couple seasons and learning from him would definitely be very beneficial to him. Or you have like the other scenario where Andy Dalton just starts choking really bad, like he was on Dallas last year, and they're like, you know, we don't want to deal with this anymore. We're going to pull up Mac Jones to the starting position. And so it'd be very beneficial for the Bears to draft Mac Jones at number 20.
At 20, I actually have Caleb Farley. I think the Bears really, for the whole length of their franchise, have been known for great defenses, and so I think they improve their defense and take Caleb Farley.
Absolutely. Number 21, the Indianapolis Colts. I believe they'll be going with wide receiver Rashad Bateman. They have a pretty good offensive line. They have a good running back in Marlon Mack. It'd be nice to add a wide receiver to that lineup. And
At 21, go ahead.
is Philip Rivers still their quarterback, or did he retire?
No, Carson Wentz is going to be their quarterback this
Carson
year.
Wentz, right. Okay, so Carson Wentz and Rashad Bateman would be a pretty solid lineup with that offensive line and with Marlon Mack in the backfield.
Right, and given that Carson Wentz is now a Colt, I have them improving their offensive line even more to give them a lot of protection and choosing Elijah Vera Tucker, inside offensive lineman out of USC.
Perfect. Over in Tennessee, the Titans have pick number 22. They have Derrick Henry. They have pretty solid quarterback in Ryan Tannehill. I think they'll be working on their defense, and I think they'll be going with cornerback Greg Newsome II.
So I have the Titans improving their defense as well. Obviously, their offense is really solid. I have them taking linebacker Jeremiah Owusa, because I know, obviously, with any defense, a linebacker is the captain of that defense, and I think the Titans need an identity, and so they're going to go the linebacker here at 22.
Right. The New York Jets have another pick at number 23. This time, I think, they got Zach Wilson at number 2. I think they're going to be working on their defense next and going with edge rusher Kwity Paye.
So I have them taking Kwity Paye as well. Again, we talk about some of the cornerstones of a good team. Edge rusher, quarterback are two really important things, and I think the Jets address both in this draft, and they get a lot better. Hopefully, finally maybe turn around their organization. Obviously, the Jets have been notably bad for a long, long time.
Right. Following at number 24 is your Pittsburgh Steelers. They restructured Big Ben. They re-signed Juju. Not really sure what's going on with James Conner, but they're going to want to protect the pieces that they just re-signed. And for that reason, I think they'll be going with offensive tackle Alex Leatherwood.
Yeah, so with the Steelers, I think there's two main areas they need to address this year in the draft, and that is their running back room and their offensive linemen. Obviously, their defense was great last year. Their offense really sputtered towards the end, specifically their running game. And they have already made their decision that they're going to let James Conner go, so that leaves a big hole again. With the retirement of Pouncey and James Conner leaving, they need a offensive tackle, or just people to bolster the line, and a running back. And I have them going running back here. I have them taking Najee Harris. Would love to see that man in a Steelers uniform. Every good Steelers team that has won a Super Bowl in the past has had a great running back. And so I think they need to get a great running back here at 24 and Najee Harris. I'd be fine, to be honest with you, with Travis Etienne out of Clemson as well. So I'd be fine with Najee Harris out of Alabama or Travis Etienne here, or an offensive lineman, but I would prefer running back. And if we can get the best running back in the draft, then why not take Najee Harris here at 24?
Right. I think moving on to the Jaguars, pick number 25. They got Trevor Lawrence at pick number 1. I think next they're going to be building up that defense, and I think they'll be going with safety Trayvon Moehrig.
So here I had them taking a wide receiver to give Trevor Lawrence a weapon. So I had them taking Rashad Bateman here at 25.
Okay. Cleveland Browns, a team that, like we stated in a previous episode, doesn't need a ton of help. I think they're just going to go with interior defensive lineman Christian Barmore, amp up that defense a little bit. But like I said, that's a team that doesn't need a ton of help because they did pretty good for themselves last season.
So I have the Browns taking an edge rusher, which now that I'm thinking about it was not the pick that I think is going to happen because they just signed Jadeveon Clowney and they already had oh my gosh, what's that guy's name? Myles Garrett before. So I don't think they're going to take an edge rusher here. I think they're going to go a different direction. So my 26th pick was Ajiz Ojulari, but I think they're going to go somewhere different with 26. So,
well, Aziz Ojulari for me went to number 27, the Baltimore Ravens. That offense is pretty good. When you got Lamar Jackson, you don't really need much else. But they can get some help on that defense, and I think they'll be going with edge rusher Aziz Ojulari.
Yeah, I had the Ravens taking an edge rusher as well. Assuming that Ajiz Ojulari goes earlier. I don't think he's going to go to the Browns like I just stated. I had forgotten when I did the mock draft that they already had those two guys, Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney. So I had Joe Tryon going to the Ravens, but I could see Ajiz Ojulari going there instead. But I know the Ravens will get an edge rusher because they need help on defense.
For sure. Pick number 28, New Orleans Saints. They did lose Drew Brees, but I don't think they're going quarterback in this draft because they have two pretty solid choices at quarterback. And so I think they'll just be getting help for those quarterbacks, and I believe they'll be drafting wide receiver Elijah Moore.
So I had them actually the Saints taking a cornerback here. I had them taking Greg Newsome the second to bolster that defense even more. So I had them taking Greg Newsome the second.
Okay. And then number 29, the Green Bay Packers. They have, who's the receiver right now? His name is slipping in my mind. I don't know why. He's really good.
Devonta Adams.
Devonta Adams. So Aaron Rodgers has Devonta Adams, but you can't do much with one receiver. You need a pretty set offense to be able to do what you want to do. And so I think they're going to get Aaron Rodgers and Devonta Adams a little bit of help and draft receiver Kadarius Toney?
Yeah, so this was really a tough one for me because, given the Packers really upset Aaron Rodgers last year by taking a quarterback in the first round instead of a wide receiver, I was debating between a wide receiver or a lineman going at the spot because they're going to want to bolster that offense and give Aaron Rodgers more protection and better receivers outside of just Devontae Adams. So I had them actually going and taking Alex Leatherwood, offensive tackle, here at 29.
All right, moving on to the Buffalo Bills, another team that did really well last season. Don't need a ton of help to fix that team. I think they'll be going with edge rusher Joe Tryon.
So I had the Bills actually taking a wide receiver here. I think they need to continue to improve their wide receiving core, and I had them taking Elijah Moore.
Okay. 31, the Baltimore Ravens have another pick. I think they'll get Lamar Jackson some help on the offensive line and go with offensive tackle Samuel Cosmi.
So I had the Ravens here taking a safety. Again, Ravens are a team that has never won without a good defense. Especially in the last couple of years, they've had a really good offense, but their defense has been lacking. So I had them taking Trevon Moehrig, safety.
All right. Last but not least, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with pick number 32. They just won the Super Bowl. They re-signed all 22 starters, which means they intend on keeping those starters. So there's not really much they need to do. I think they'll just go with Jason Owe, edge rusher.
So I had the Bucs taking Kadarius Toney. I think just improving that wide receiving core even more. And they're just going to take Kadarius Toney. It's obviously already a really good team, so they can't really mess with this pick.
Exactly. So we're at 32 minutes. I know we had a few topics to talk about today, but our draft predictions took more time than expected. So we'll get to those topics that we were going to talk about next week because I want to make sure to give them the time and attention they deserve because a lot of these are really big topics. Besides the jersey number rule change, that's not a big deal, but the Watson situation and Alex Smith retiring, I think Alex Smith deserves a little bit of attention, and so we'll focus on those topics that we missed next week.
Absolutely. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed our mock draft. Looking forward to watching the mock draft, or the real draft, excuse me, with you on Thursday. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jacob.